Good evening, dear students. Now, in today's video, I'm going to focus on something extremely very important, something that candidates would always forget or leave out because they tend to underestimate it, and it's extremely very crucial for paper 3 literature. Now, I'm talking about stagecraft. Oh yes, stagecraft. Now, stagecraft is one of those very important components of theater performance that sometimes teachers tend to ignore them. They don't really drill students on stagecraft, and it is a very one thing that examiners are always going to challenge students on. For the past years, the examiner has always presented a question on stagecraft, a question that requires candidates to create, to show their creative mind, to show that creative impulse on what they can improvise when it comes to stage performance. It is very regular for examiners to always ask you to assume that you are a director. How will you direct a certain scene? Maybe in class or on stage or wherever you people are performing that play. So such a question will require candidates to tap into their own creative mind and then get to improvise something. It may be at the level of decor or scenery, or at the level of the costume that characters would wear while on stage. Now, I remember 2021, June 2021, paper 3, the examiners asked students to actually improvise how Gertrude's bedroom chamber would be, because the extract that the candidates handled that year was taken from Hamlet's encounter with the mother in the mother's bedroom chamber. That's Gertrude, while Polonius was at the back of the curtains or the arras, eavesdropping on the conversation between mother and son. And so candidates were asked to improvise how that setting could probably have looked like. In that case, candidates were expected to give comments on how a queen's bedroom chamber would look like. So we observe that it is very important for us to master elements of stagecraft, because there's no way you can escape it. Now, this year we are talking about Coriolanus. Is a history play written by William Shakespeare. So the very first item of stagecraft, which is very important that candidates take note of, is cast. What is cast? Cast is an element of stagecraft. Now, cast is a sum total of all actors and actresses who put up stage performance for a play. When they come together, they make up the cast. Sometimes you see a scene that has very few actors and actresses. Sometimes you see other scenes that the stage is more crowded. For instance, when we encounter the plebeians, the mutinous plebeians rioting the streets of Rome, demanding for grain, that corn should be given to them at their own prices or their own rates, we observe that the stage will possibly be very crowded with a group of people striking with any item they can find around, clubs, stick matches, and all of that. And then we also have another scene when the ladies were discussing. We are talking about Virgilia, talking about Volumnia, Virgilia, the wife of Coriolanus or Caius Marcius, Volumnia, the mother, or the good woman of Rome, Valeria, who comes visiting. In that case, the cast is purely feminine. So the examiner expects students to have a mastery of cast of any of the plays that they are handling, because to handle cast means to get to understand the characters and the role each of them plays. Now, bear in mind that when it comes to managing stage performance, the fewer the cast members, the easier it is to manage them. But when the cast is quite exhaustive, it becomes more challenging to manage on stage. So cast becomes an element of stagecraft. You must be able to understand that cast is the sum total of all the actors and actresses who put up performances. So with respect to the various scenes and acts, the cast members will change depending on what is going on at what level of the play. So that's the first one. Now, the second aspect of stagecraft that is very important that we take note of is spectacle. What is spectacle? Now, spectacle is action itself. Now, bear in mind that spectacle is a linguistic feature. Sometimes characters will be ululating when women go on stage and they ululate. Sometimes they are dancing. Sometimes the mutinous commoners are striking, moving around with machete, with clubs and anything they can find around. Or maybe we are talking about Caius Marcius and his men, while they are at the war at Corioli, and Caius comes in and asks them to join him so they can charge up against the vultures, and the men were throwing their caps and their swords in the air. That is spectacle. So the more intensity the spectacle, the more thrill the performance generates, and the more excitement within members of the audience as they watch on the performance on stage. Now let us bear in mind that plays are written to be enacted on stage for live performances. So anything that is done on stage is out there to thrill and generate excitement and enthusiasm in the hearts and minds of the audiences for performance on stage. So spectacle is action itself. Action itself. It is not the speeches that characters deliver. Maybe they are soliloquizing, or it is a monologue or a conversation. No, spectacle is action itself, and the more intensive and really the action is, the more entertaining and thrill that is generated for stage performance. So that is the second one that we must bear in mind. The third item that we must also bear in mind at the level of stagecraft is costume. Costume. Now, costume, of course, is always very colorful. Costume, again, is the outfit that actors and actresses put on while they perform on stage, and costume is often determined by the character. So we observe that the social level of the character determines how they appear on stage. Now let us use Coriolanus again for an example. Now Coriolanus is a military general, and every time we see him, we would normally visualize a military general clad in his war gear. War gear means, remember we are talking about the Romans, he will probably be wearing a helmet, holding his shield and his sword on his hip, his side hip, and probably dressed in the kind of outfit that has a girdle around the chest to protect their chest, since they usually fight with sword, and then something to guard his shins, and sandals, because we are going back to the days of the Romans. And so that's a typical outfit that a Roman military man or general would wear. Now we can also talk about the tribunes, Brutus, Junius Brutus and Sicinius Velutus. Now they are tribunes. They will not normally dress in wartime gear, so you likely visualize them dressed in the Roman gowns that they flip over their shoulders. Same thing can be said with the senators. So we are discussing colorful costumes as an imperative item of stage performance because it determines the social level of the cast members or the characters. Now that's the third that we also have to bear in mind. Another aspect of stagecraft is stage props. In other words, stage properties. Well, shortened from stage props. So stage props there will deal with the objects that is used for stage performance. It could be a stool, like when Valeria comes visiting. When she visits Volumnia and Virgilia, the wife of Coriolanus, we are told, the stage direction tells us that they are seated on stools and they are doing some needlework. So the items we're using for needlework and the stool on which they sat were items of stage props. So stage props are the objects that are used for stage performance. It is very important because it generates more enthusiasm and helps build the setting. So it is also a very important element of stagecraft. Now that reminds me of something else. When we talk about setting, it takes us to scenery or decor. Scenery or decor is another very vital component of stage performance because scenery comes from the word scene, and the scene there is built by virtue of the setting. So the setting there helps. Remember that stage performance, when we talk about drama and theater arts, performance will be done it's just on the stage. Now, so we have to ensure that we adapt that stage to different settings so that it mimics the true setting of the story as it develops. There are times where we have to change the setting to make it look like the battleground of Corioli. We are also going to change it to make it look like Coriolanus' house where we meet the ladies discussing. Later on, we have to make it look like the scene is or the public market square where Coriolanus is addressing the people, or where he's having an exchange with the tribunes, Sicinius and Brutus, or with the senators, or with Cominius, his friend and fellow general. So for us to be able to change this setting means that we'll need different decoration to match the respective settings. Now, I just earlier made mention of Hamlet, where we encounter Hamlet having a tete-a-tete with the mother in the mother's bedroom chamber while Polonius was behind the arras eavesdropping on the conversation. Now, that is a setting. You would normally visualize a very sophisticated bedroom chamber because we are talking about the queen of Denmark. You also want to add maybe a very large mirror and maybe a dresser with some flowers. All of these items we put into decorate the stage to make it look like a queen's bedroom chamber is what we call scenery or decor, which means it is also a very important aspect of stage performance. Without it, stage performance would not be able to come together. Now, another item that we might also want to talk about at the level of stagecraft is lighting. Now, lighting is also on that aspect. Now, lighting helps us to be able to see the change of setting, especially at level of time. We will need to be able to manipulate a lighting system so that we can be able to adopt the stage for daytime or for night. Sometimes lighting can also be used to mimic the appearance of a ghost, courtesy of Hamlet. We can't make a spirit appear on stage, so we can use lights, focus it on one part of the speech, and then once somebody speaks at the back to make it look like it is a ghost. So lighting is also an aspect of stagecraft. Now, these items I've discussed are very, very important. Take note of them, what they are, and be able to improvise on how you can create them on stage, because you're likely going to see a question on stagecraft in either Coriolanus or A Dance of the Forest by Wole Soyinka, which is a play we are going to come to. So with that, you should understand that you are in the examiner's mind, and that question carries 2 marks. 2 marks, oh yes, it carries 2 marks. You improvise, explain what it is, and you substantiate the textual illustration to get all 2 marks. So that is it for our today's video. We have worked on stagecraft. Now you just need to go into the play and try to see how these different elements of stagecraft find manifestation in the various plays that we are going to be studying. So, like I earlier said, if you've learned anything in this video, please hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to this channel. I really insist that you do subscribe to this channel, and then you spread the news about the channel. Talk about it to your friends in your various study groups, and then help to extend it to Facebook and hit the like button too, so that our class can keep growing. It's the only way we can reach out to those who find themselves in the far-flung corners of the town and the country, given that we have just 4 months or so to go in there and take the GCE. So in our very next video, we are going to change gears and do something very important in English language. This time around, we are going to focus on the role of women in any of the selected texts. It could be Across the Mongolo, it could be Alex Laguma's A Walk in the Night, or Bole Butake's Lego. So we are going to take these 3 plays and look at the role of women and how authors see women in the society and what role they expect women to play. So keep this rendezvous, same channel, same time, this same time in the evening. Tomorrow I will drop that video the same time in the evening. So ensure that you keep watching, and again hit the subscribe button. I'll remind you of that. So goodbye.